Something's wrong with my sound setup.
I heard it.
Yeah, it was coming.
Did Rob come in? Did the sound fairy come in and mess up your junk?
Yeah, totally. Hello, this is Lawrence Lewis.
And this is Sister Christian.
Today is Thursday, October 8th, 2020. This is the Producer's Happy Hour. It's a weekly podcast with two producers on opposite coasts. Christian, you're back in New York City, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank goodness.
I'm back in Los Angeles, and we're exploring what it means to be a good producer as we come out of this global shutdown and figure out how to get the film industry back to work. I mean, it seems like we're working, but, we're still trying to navigate how to do it safely while still navigating the coronavirus.
I mean, we're definitely working, but it seems like everybody's got their own opinion on how we should be doing it. Because we find ourselves being asked to take on greater responsibilities from a variety of guidelines created by multiple sources. Now more than ever, it's important for us to keep sharing our experiences, our ideas, and just what's happening out there on the jobs.
Right. So we need to hear from you to hear how you guys are keeping your crew safe, how you guys are getting back to work. So email us at producershappyhour@gmail.com.
And please rate this show. Please like us. We need your likes. It validates our existence. Please rate the show on Apple Podcast and share the show with your friends and colleagues, your, mother-in-law. We want these stories to be heard.
Yeah, it helps the algorithms, helps people like you find the show. So today, Christian, we have part 2 of our interview with agency producer Karen Jean.
Miss KJ.
Miss KJ. Last week, we talked about filming under COVID from an agency perspective and what that means for them. And today, our chat steered towards systemic racism in our industry, in advertising and commercial film industries. And that's what our interview is today. And it was great to listen to KJ and learn from her experience as a Black woman in advertising.
Eye-opening. It always is. It was a great interview, and I definitely learned things, for sure.
Yes. And that's what we all need to be doing right now, is listening and learning.
Yes.
So, Christian, you've been a busy beaver.
You're
back from Texas. You're back in New York, and you've been working nonstop. How's it going? How are you doing? How are you holding in?
Now that I've got this many jobs under my belt, I can't. It's just and I'm not complaining. It's just much harder than it used to be. Yeah. But I just had my first run in with a cost consultant.
Oh, that sounds fun.
So I turned in a budget that is meant to film in November, and came back with every single line number question, like literally every single line number questioned, in addition to, just questioning all of the COVID costs. And listen, I know by this point, cost consultants have been, they've absolutely been clued in onto, what this is and how much it costs and what it should be. I know I brought this up a couple months ago now, that not only are you learning, you're teaching other people their job. And then the next job, there's some people who haven't done it yet. So you're teaching. So the next job, and it just feels like that is I'm not sure when that's going to end.
Right.
I'm not sure if or when, maybe never, that's going to end. And I think my patience level is wearing a little bit thin on having to justify safety.
Yeah.
It's starting to wear pretty thin. And then, then as a woman, I hear things like, you look tired. Maybe you should take a break. Like, when do you ever tell that to a male producer?
No.
I mean, seriously. And so I'm just like, I'm at the end of like, you're right. Sure. When you can do what I do, I'll take a break. So I'm a little, I'm happy to be back in New York, but I'm definitely a little disenfranchised. Is that a word?
Yeah, it is. I think.
Is that how I'm feeling, Lawrence? How are you doing?
I think it is. I mean, I definitely am as well. I've been fortunate enough to take a little break after my last project.
Yeah, but your last one, you jumped face first right in.
Yeah, it was a big one. It was a monster.
Exactly.
It was a monster. So, there's some other possibilities of work coming up that seem fine. But disenfranchised, when the infection is swarming around the White House and there's talk about
I laugh because it's funny.
Yes.
Go on.
I laugh so I don't cry.
Exactly.
The halts of negotiating some sort of relief for people who are still out of work, still unemployed, still can't put food on the table, still can't pay rent, and they want
Airlines
to
are
just kind of,
closing.
yeah, it's just, man, that's what I find disenfranchising, is the lack of care in government right now for what is happening to our industries and to us as people and citizens.
It's almost like it's governing by whim or emotion, which, is, again, I'm on a tear today, Lawrence. Women are too emotional. They could never be president.
Oh, yeah.
So getting political, and we can, when seeing last night's debate and seeing how calm, cool, collected that Kamala Harris had to be the entire time,
Yeah.
so that she would never give off an appearance of, she'd walk a line of never
Yeah.
giving off an appearance of being emotional or hysterical or angry.
Yep.
Which is a title and label that is assigned to Black women often.
Yes.
So
often.
Seeing her swallow the crap she had to is just like, man.
Exactly. And it harkens back to how, and the fly.
Oh, so.
And it's hard not to talk about these politics things because, it
affects us directly.
It affects us directly in terms of how much work is out there, since both you and I work primarily in commercial filmmaking and in advertising, not in narrative, film or TV. And the stimulus talk obviously made the market plummet a couple days ago.
Yep.
Now it's coming back up, but there's all kinds of craziness and confusion as to what is going to happen. He's now saying he wants to sign a stimulus $1,200 check to everyone. He wants to bail out the airlines.
Yeah. He wants to pick and choose what will help him out of, something bigger that will help everybody. So it's just selfish yet again.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's steroids.
There is talk about some sort of steroid mania going on. But there was an article in Ad Age today that some fast food chains are doing well because there is, of course, a demand for cheap food and easily delivered food.
Yeah.
But some aren't. And some franchises like Pizza Hut and Subway are closing locations. As many as 36,000 of them may not last for even a few more months without another stimulus package. And the founder of Shake Shack, he's like, we can't re-employ people for this PPP money if we're going out of business, if we're closing stores. So there's still a big problem out there, and there's still a potential for another very serious economic downturn that no one seems to be taking seriously.
Right. And the thing that struck me about this article that you showed, Lawrence, was that if we do get a second round of stimulus, it works out to $11 a day for everyone. What are you going to do with your $11?
Yeah, man. Jeez.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, with this lack of the additional funding in the unemployment amount and this inability to get some businesses back up and running, it's a big problem.
It is. No plan in sight.
There is one more thing I wanted to mention, Christian, because this is, in all this doom and gloom, this is kind of a cool little thing.
Okay, give it to us.
And since I am on this show representing Los Angeles, I thought it was cool. It's something I've known about for a long time, and it's a series of photographs by Ed Ruscha, who is an artist. He documented all of Sunset Boulevard between 1965 and 2007 by photographs. He set up a car. This is before Google Earth cars.
Yeah.
He had 2 cameras on the roof of the car to shoot both sides of the street, and he just drove from downtown to the west side and just took pictures along the way. And this was a big project. He did it over many years to document the change of Sunset Boulevard. And now Getty Research Institute launched this today. It's called 12 Sunsets, Exploring Ed Ruscha's Archives. It's an interactive website that put together over 60,000 of these photos.
That's so weird. That's crazy.
So you can drive on this website. It depends what part of Sunset you're on. So they don't have it from 1965 through all of Sunset Boulevard, but a lot of it's there. And you can drive through and scan up through the decades to see how the buildings changed and back down. And you can go left, right, and you can flip around and see the other side of the street. It's fascinating. So I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, but you can find it on getty.edu. Just search for 12 Sunsets, Ed Ruscha. It's pretty cool.
That sounds really cool.
So if you need a break from politics, if you need a refresh after the debate last night, that's something you can do and just get to explore Los Angeles in all its glory.
Beautiful.
Let's let's get to the interview, part 2 with agency producer Karen Jean.
But first, please head over to our website, click on the link, do the work. This is a page on our website that has anti-racism resources for you to educate yourself on the issues racism have long plagued our society, as well as a link to actionable things that you can do to support Black Lives Matter movement. This ties in directly with our interview today, everyone.
Yes, it does. So make sure you take a look at those resources on that page, as well as the Take Action page. We're going to highlight wegotthevote.org.
We got this.
Yes. In 2018, the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, it was a grassroots effort to pass Amendment 4, which restored the voting rights to citizens after they've paid their debt to society for crimes they've committed. However, what the lawmakers did in that area is they tweaked the law to now say that people who have served their time now have to pay off whatever parking tickets or fines or things that they have still on their record before they're allowed to vote.
Could be as little as $50.
Could be as little as $50, which literally turns that back into a poll tax, which we all know was something that we got rid of decades ago. So this website, you can donate to help pay off those fines to give the voting rights back to people who have paid their debt to society.
It's very important, everyone. And then don't forget about Power to the Polls. Please, volunteer, go to your polls, drive somebody to vote.
Yeah.
Like whatever you can do safely. Use your Lyft account.
Yep, exactly.
However you can help somebody else
get
vote.
People to the
polls.
Do it.
Get them to the polls.
All right.
Oh, postcards for me.
Oh, yes.
Gonna be mailed soon.
I'm diving into them this week. I've got a lot to write, but yes, getting those out in time to convince people in swing states to vote. All right, Karen Jean is back with us for part 2, KJ. She's an agency producer who has worked in both New York and Los Angeles at a number of well-known shops and brands like BBDO, Ground Zero, and most recently, David and Goliath.
Here's part 2 of our interview with KJ as the conversation shifted towards systemic racism in our industry.
Let's take a listen. You mentioned building the sandbox, and something that we've talked about on this show a lot is about we're kind of at this moment, not only in our personal lives, but in our careers of rebuilding, right? We're getting to rewrite the rules of the playbook. An aspect we talk a lot about on the show is systemic racism. And we want to keep that conversation going because, now is the moment. It's not only COVID and it's not only our careers, it's what's happening, today on the streets. As, there are protests right now as we're speaking with regards to Breonna Taylor and to all the injustice that's been happening. And, we want to have this conversation with you, but, we don't want it to be two white people asking a black woman, what our problem is.
Hey, I'm white.
But, we want to know what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that we're facing in this industry?
Because we will never see that.
I mean, it is. And the thing is, you're right. There is a point where you may never see it. Like the two of you may never see it. Although if it becomes egregious enough, you will. And what's happening?
I mean, if we're looking, we will.
And the thing,
but we'll never experience it. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, it's not necessarily the experiencing it. I think it is the noticing of it, because sometimes it is very minor. Sometimes it is very slight. And then sometimes it is in your face. Breonna Taylor, that is in your face. You cannot ignore that. You have someone who literally was in their house, minding their business. This giant thing happens and it's like, well, something should be done and nothing's being done. And in fact, what was done was so offensive where it was just like, I'm sorry, let's fire this guy because he missed, like at that point, it's just like, what is happening? Like, that is crazy. Yeah. When you go into our industry, I don't think there's a ton of crazy things that happen. Yes, there are. Like, there are going to be people who have like stories of like ridiculous, crazy things. But I think, especially like for myself as a Black woman in the agency life, there's a lot of like little aggressions and minor issues that tend to add up to the bigger one. It's, going into a meeting for the first time and having someone like literally taken aback physically because they didn't realize that you were Black, because you were on the phone with them or you were talking to them for a while, and then you come in person and they literally shake a little And you're just like, oh, okay. That
Wow.
happens. I've had that happen on a number of occasions where, they take a second look. It's little things like in agency life where you're walking down the hallway of an agency that you have worked at for years and years, and you say hello to someone and they literally walk by you like you're not there because they don't feel like a need for an interaction at that moment. And it happens. And
Wow.
it's one of those where you're just like, I'm sorry, what? Or better yet, you literally go, hey, how are you? They walk by you and the person behind you who's white goes, hey, what's up? And they respond to that. And it's like, okay. These little minor things. And it may seem frivolous, but things like you're sharing an office with someone and people come in and talk to her and go, hey, I'm going for a walk around the block. Want to come? But the invite never gets,
Right.
extended to you. Or it gets they realize that I'm noticing that I haven't been invited and they're like, oh, we didn't think you'd want to be a part of it. We didn't think you'd want to go. And it's like,
Wow.
oh, why would that be?
Thanks.
I like walking.
They decide
Yeah,
for you.
it's like I like walking too. Sometimes I like to get out and take
I
a
have
walk.
legs.
I have
I
legs
walk.
too.
I walk.
And it's like that little, everyone's going to lunch except for you because you weren't invited. Like it's little
Wow.
minor aggressions like that where it's just like all of a sudden you're being left out or you're being singled out or people don't think you want to be a part of it because they don't want to actually ask you or they're just thinking, I'm just going to ask someone else and not have you be a part of it. And it happens a lot. It happens a lot. And that's happened across my career to the point where it has happened enough that I've been desensitized to it. But after a while, it does get annoying. I think the walking down the hallway and saying hi to someone and having them completely walk by you like you're not there, that's the one that really gets on my nerves. That's the one that gets on my nerves the most. But it does
for
happen.
somebody to not acknowledge you, like that, they're not even acknowledging that you
Yeah.
exist.
Your very existence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, after a while, being Black in advertising, that's a thing that happens. And if you talk to a lot of other people who are in advertising, it's one of those aggressions that you deal with. Or, there's always like the hair aggression where, you get your hair done and people want to touch your hair. And it's just like, please don't do that. Minor things. And it seems minor to everyone else. For you, sometimes it's like, all right, that's enough. Like, it's like when you're pregnant and people reach out to touch your stomach and it's like, please don't touch me.
I would never.
And, and people wouldn't think of doing that, or they'll at least ask, but like you're just walking in and people are just like reaching out. And I'm like, please don't touch me. This is like, why are you doing that? But it's, those are the minor aggressions. But then there's also in order for you to get to a specific position, I've been in production my entire life. It took years for me to get to the EP level. You have to be about 5 times better than the person next to you.
Yes.
There is no way to get to rise above unless you literally stand out. And I mean stand out next to the other producer. I have worked with producers in my career where I'm like, how are you a producer? Like how?
Right.
I'm like, I don't really understand how. But yet you are moving up further than I am, and I am busting my butt. I'm busting my butt to be like as buttoned up, all the way around as possible, because I can't have an excuse for anyone to go, you're not good enough. And
that level of perfection is just, it's so, the maintaining of it and the stress and the anxiety that it causes is just beyond.
Oh, I've gotten to the point, it's sad. I'm so used to it. I'm such a workaholic, but I shouldn't have to be.
Right.
I'm the daughter of immigrant parents who really put into my mind, your education and your work ethic is the only thing that's going to push you forward in life. Your education is everything, and you have to work hard. Those are the two things. 2 things that you needed.
My mom is an immigrant from Ecuador. Same exact thing. Same exact principles from day one. So so that's interesting that you say that.
I think a lot of immigrant families, and I'm speaking from the immigrant families that I know, they're very, very education, work hard, and you can do something. I think the biggest pull for America, for immigrants, is the fact that you can make something of yourself. Nothing holds you back unless you do. And so if you are able to apply yourself and work hard, you can get somewhere. Granted, the racism that does exist, which is a very systematic racism, is another like weight that's tied around your ankle. So it's like you're trying to run a 10-yard dash, but you've got weights on your ankles, which means that you have to work even harder to get further. That's the best way to look at systematic racism. It's a system that is built not for you. You know, it's not built for you. It's built for someone else. And so if you were not one of those people that the system was built for, you have to work that much harder to get forward. And even then, they will look at you and go, why are you here? So it's one of those things that you literally have to look at it and go, there's no way to change the system. It actually needs to be broken down and rebuilt. Because everyone's just like, you have to change. And it's like, no, it's ingrained. It's a system that started off years and years and years ago. It was built by white men for white men. And if you were not a white man, you will have problems. White women, they have problems as well. Like they are working their way up and it's not built for them. They may have it slightly better than Black men, but definitely not built for them. Now add a Black woman. Definitely not built for you.
Yeah.
So it's like everybody is on the ladder at different rungs trying to get up. But unless you are a white man, which is who this system was built for, you're all struggling to kind of get up. And you have to work so hard to get up that rung. It literally needs to be leveled. Like it needs to be just completely shattered and then rebuilt.
Do you see that happening? Do you think we're possibly there?
Not even close. Not even close. Simply because
can we ever get there?
Well, you would have to take the people who are at the top of that rung that the system was built for, and they would have to then look down the ladder to go, oh shit, this is not built right. We need to start over. But if the people who this system services, if they're like, no, this is totally fine for me, it's not going to work. And it doesn't matter how often people are down on the bottom trying to shake it to break it down. There are enough people on the other side of it trying to keep it up. It has to be a united front of, we all recognize that there is an issue here and we need to work towards it. The riots that are happening in the streets right now wouldn't be going on if there wasn't a force trying to keep it as is. I mean, you've got a president who's in the office who's trying to write executive orders to tell people that systemic racism doesn't exist. He's trying to teach that, you know, he's trying to erase slavery. Like, let's erase all the bad stuff so that kids are going to be brought up not knowing. You know, at that point, it's if you raise everybody in ignorance, then that ignorance will continue. It is important for people to understand the history of how we got here, to understand the oppression of women, to understand the oppression of races, to understand and accept the fact that awful, awful things got us to where we are now. Because understanding those awful things means that we try not to relive them. If we erase all of it, then it all comes back later, but just in a different form.
Yeah. Pretty quickly, too.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
And there's a good amount of ugliness that's going on now that basically, if you went back to the 60s, exactly what was happening then is happening now. The only difference is there's not segregation. Well, there is, it's just not in your face. You know?
There's
no signs, but
signs.
it does exist. You know, you go into neighborhoods and you already see that segregation naturally happens when you've got real estate people who don't show Black families houses in specific neighborhoods because they don't want them in those neighborhoods. It happens when you go looking for a house. It happens when you try to go to school, where all of a sudden it's just like you're trying to get into a specific school, even at the elementary level, and you realize that the schools that are doing really well tend to be all white, and the schools that, are struggling tend to be mostly Black. And you're just kind of like, well, how is this happening? It shouldn't be happening at the elementary school level, but it is. It starts that young and it just continues on. So until something is done to shake it to its core, it exists. And it's so important for people, when they notice it, when they realize what's happening, to speak up, to literally say, no, we can't accept this. Because the thing is, when you do not fight to change something, then you are choosing to accept it. And at that point, you have to make a decision in your life. Do you just want to choose and keep systematic racism going on by doing nothing, by saying nothing? Or do you want to try to help shake that tree down? Do you want to help shake it to help rebuild it? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be out on the streets with a sign, protesting every single day. It could be something as simple as where you're working. And if you see something, try to say something at that matter. Reach out to someone who isn't part of your group and invite them in. Work with the people who are the powers to be to say, hey, we need to hire more people in. We need to diversify within the walls. It shouldn't be a case of, when I go to work, I'm the only Black person there, which, to be honest with you, the last position I was in, there were 2 people of color. 2.
Wow.
Including
myself. And, I'm on Zoom meetings, and it's just like, here are 30 people on a Zoom meeting, and I'm like, oh, and I'm the only one. And yeah, I know we're minorities for a reason. However, it should be more than just one person. Like, you have to be able to look around to see some sort of diversity, some sort of, this company is trying. And that's where it's surprising to me. I think advertising agencies as a whole have a lot of work to do when it comes to, let's make sure that we're diversifying, because there's a lot of speech towards it. And there's a lot of, we need to support Black Lives Matter, and we need to, advertising agencies, initiatives, posts, and
performative,
posts, there's like the Instagram post, like, we need to diversify. But yet, when you go inside their house, you're just like, hey, what's happening here?
What's actually happening
behind your walls? Because you're speaking a great game, but behind your walls, you need to be able to live that. And until companies are able to live that, to actually bring the awareness in-house, it's not going to change. We need to be able to make those changes. And advertising particularly, because if you really think about it, advertising is built on segregating everyone, because it's built on demographics. It's built on our target audience is wealthy white women from 100%. This age to this age. So let's just target them. And all of a sudden you've got an ad. And if you're targeting someone who is a wealthy person from this, age to this age of this race, all of a sudden your ads are not really diversified, because you're targeting a specific audience. And it's just kind of,
and that's all you're going to
get, rather than opening up the umbrella to make sure that you're getting, a vast amount of people in. So in its essence, advertising is a bit segregating, and that needs to change so that we're able to bring everyone in, because everybody buys stuff. It's not just white women who buy lipstick. Like, it's one of those things where it's just like, I don't know, I love lipstick. Like a lot of different colors of lipstick. It's just kind of like, I don't know, maybe, more,
I feel like it's almost becoming gender neutral right now. So.
It's just one of those things where it's just like, why not open it up to actually get more customers in, as opposed to just doing your targets, your specific targets and stuff.
Yeah.
And as you begin to do that, representation is huge, because then it just normalizes it in a way that, anybody can buy lipstick.
There's a lot of little gay boys out there that are trying to figure out what shade is for them.
And you know what? There's a lot of really nice shades.
There's like,
really pretty shades. Like, I want to try some different colors. Like, come on. It's one of those where, I don't know, a lot of work needs to be done. And I think right now what's going on is awareness. And I think that's the first step, because the things that are being called to light right now, the reason why people are protesting, it's not new. It's not like all of a sudden police brutality against Black people just started. No, it's been going on for a really long time. The only difference is that people have cameras right now. More people have cameras, so now more people are seeing it. And before, it used to be, you know, like when I was young and I was learning how to drive, my dad taught me exactly what to do when I got pulled over. I honestly thought this is exactly what everybody had to do when they got pulled over. He's just like, if you ever get pulled over, make sure you turn your car off. Make sure you put the keys on top of the dashboard. Already have your license and registration pulled out before the officer shows up, and put your hands on the steering wheel so that he can always see your hands. And I'm like, oh, that's the drill. Everybody does that. This is what you do. And it's like, no, that's not what everybody does. And I remember being pulled over one day, and I had a white friend in the car with me. And I literally went through the whole procedure. I'm like, oh, let me get my stuff. Let me turn the car off. Keys up here. And I'm like, hi, officer. And I'm literally handing him my stuff before he even asked for it. Like, you know, hands are here. And my friend's like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I was just like, that's what you do when you get pulled over. And she's like, no, it's not. And I'm just like, what do you mean? And I'm like, no. And she's just like, no, you don't even know why he's pulling you over. And I'm like, I don't know, but here's my license and registration. He sees my hands. This is what my dad taught me. Yeah. Because this is what you do so you don't get killed. I didn't know this. Yeah. Like, you know, I'm like 16, like learning how to drive, 16, 17. I'm like, I'm just learning how to drive. This is what you do. And it was a surprise to me when I found out that it's just like what you do because you're a Black female. This is what you do to prevent anything from escalating or from anything happening. And my naive self just thought it was just a regular drill. But he was doing, as a father, the right thing in teaching me how to make sure that I abide so that nothing happens. And that's one of those moments where you go, oh, well, that sucks. You know, you know, that realization is like really deep founded. But it's been existing for years and years. And, you know, it's only just now being brought to light. And so what I'm hoping is that this awareness, like people getting upset over Breonna, you know, people getting upset over George Floyd. Yes, please get upset. Get upset. Yes. You have to be mad. You have to be, as white friends, as white allies, you have to be outraged. You have to go, this is fucked up. When does this stop? And at that point, when you are outraged, that's when things will start to change. Because us being outraged, we've been outraged for years, decades. And no one listened, or they're just like, oh, it's just in your head. Oh, that didn't really happen. But it's just like, no, now you're seeing it. And now, hopefully, with more awareness, we can shake the tree and try to break it down so we can rebuild it. Yeah. Wow.
KJ, thank you so much. It was lovely chatting with you, and it was lovely working
Lauren.
with you, and I hope our paths cross again.
Well,
please stay in
Lauren.
touch.
Thank you, Christian.
Wow. I mean, great interview.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that she has experienced as a Black woman in advertising that obviously we have the privilege to not have happen to us. And it's eye-opening to hear about that and hear about her experience and how we need to take the leads to correct these problems, because this is a white person problem.
Yeah, if we're not doing something about it, then we're only adding to the problem.
Exactly. So thank you, Karen Jean, for joining us today. We appreciate your time and sharing all that with us.
Thank you. So, Lawrence, this show was edited and co-produced by Rob Bloomkey.
Artwork and logo design by Christopher Daniels.
And our music was composed by Kyle Puccia.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week. Until then, stay safe, stay connected, and stay active. Make your voice heard.
Vote.
By voting.
Yeah, just go and vote.
Yes.
But before you do, wash your hands,
Yeah.
stop touching your face, clean your phone, it's disgusting, and wear a mask because it keeps popping up. But guess what? The one thing that's keeping you safe is wearing a mask.
Send your voice recordings or emails to producershappyhour@gmail.com.
Lawrence, how can people reach you directly?
voiceoflawrence.com for voiceover work or lawrencetLewis.com for producing. How about you, Christian?
People can get me at sisterchristianproduces.com.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.